Welcome everyone to another audio recording in the IsetTheMic series. Today we're going to be talking about late blooming lesbians. And while labels can be challenging for some of us to use, I have found that they have been very powerful in connecting us that are experiencing things that some don't relate to or understand. I shared a little bit about my Come Out As You Are journey in a previous audio recording, and this one is really going to be talking more about what it is like to be a late blooming lesbian in lesbian and sapphic spaces where sometimes we do not connect or understand the terminology or the experiences of lesbians and sapphics who have always known themselves to be woman-loving women and XX people that are loving women as XX people. It is important to have these conversations because we are the ones that understand what it is like, and safety is required when we have those conversations. And so I'm so grateful for the spaces that I've been invited to be a part of, where I have connected with other late blooming lesbians and those in the sapphic spectrum. I remember being a little girl experiencing attraction with other little girls, but I didn't understand where to put that in my life because being of Jamaican cultural background and being born and raised as a Canadian citizen, I have experienced the homo-transphobic conversations and the violence and the harm that has been inflicted upon those that exist in the LGBTQIA2S+ spectrum. It is important to understand that lesbians are the only ones in the sapphic spectrum that are interested, attracted to connections, intimacy, love, dating, and marriage with women XX people only. Those that exist in the sapphic spectrum that are not lesbians are interested in connecting with more than women XX people. They are more inclusive in the spectrum. So for those of us that have been in these spaces, whether virtually or in real life, there have been conversations that have been happening surrounding more about the aesthetic and the physical aspect of women XX people that maybe some of us don't relate to or can't engage in those conversations because maybe they're like me, someone who is a demisexual, which experiences attraction solely at the emotional level first, or being sapiosexual, where we experience our attraction at the cerebral, intellectual, mental level first. So what essentially that means is if I don't have a cosmic, ancestral, a spiritual, divine connection through emotion and cerebral connection, then I cannot be intimate with a woman. And while I have been approached throughout my life to connect intimately in those ways, I've already shared that I've experienced severe trauma at the hands of women where I didn't know that I was safe there. And I'm thankful that throughout my life I have experienced love in platonic ways and intimate ways with women. It took a lot of therapy for me to get to this place where I am able to heal that part of myself. And I'm really thankful to be here. The other thing is that there are conversations in the lesbian and sapphic communities centering around things in the intimacy using strapping. And I did share in a previous audio recording about the Keeper of Secrets that is not something that I enjoy. Phallic and phallus penetration is not something that I want to engage in, I have no interest in, and I receive no pleasure from, and even seeing a phallus is a turnoff for me. And so I don't relate to the conversations that women are having surrounding enjoyment in that realm. I also remember that when I used to date men, some of them would make mention to me that they experienced me treating them and being intimate with them in such a way that was as though they were a woman. And I didn't really understand what that was at that time because we're socialized to center men's pleasure first above our own. So once a man is done, the intimacy is done. And I personally never really related and understood those things, especially when other women around me would talk so graphically about the pleasure that they experience with men, where I was more in a performative space for my partner's pleasure. Another thing that comes to mind is the gender wars. The hetero gender normatives are still discussed in lesbian sapphic spaces because, particularly if we're dealing with two femmes who are dating each other, the question becomes, well, who's the provider, who's the protector, who's going to be the man? And what I appreciate about the lesbian relationships and connections that I've experienced is that we center each other as women, XX people first, holistically. There is no centering of men or male or masculinity in its socialization. We value each other as women that are able to bring our 100% to that connection. And we deconstruct what colonization has taught us about how we love each other. The other thing that's important to understand is when I grew up, what I saw surrounding Black lesbians was pornographic and always sexual in nature and always had a man involved. It was as though two women could not love each other, whether platonically or intimately, without a man's approval or a man's presence. And so I'm thankful to know and to be in the experience that that is a choice. If two women want to include a man in their connection, then that is their choice. But it is not what is centered, especially in lesbian relationships. What is also important to note is sometimes you can receive readings and divinations, which I've shared before on my platform. And many years ago, I had received readings and divinations where the practitioner had mentioned to me that they see me as lesbian or that I have intimate relationships with women, which I didn't understand because of the trauma that I experienced around women in the past. So now being here full circle makes a lot of sense. And it's really interesting because with all the work that I'm doing in Indigenous cosmology as a student and a practitioner, I really appreciate those indigeneity where they amplify the reality that women loving each other, being married to each other, and being in relationships with each other have always existed. And while the term lesbian and sapphic may be new age, it has always existed and it is embraced, it is understood, it's valued, and it's even celebrated in certain villages and tribes and cultures within African and Indigenous, with Indigenous people. I'm also in immense gratitude for my generation and the generations that are coming, because we are really exemplifying what it means to be fully ourselves. I understand the danger where our rights are being usurped and the harm and the violence that comes towards us when we simply say, this is who we are. This is why being in community, coming in unity is very important. And I'm thankful for the communities that I have shared with lesbians and sapphics. I specifically created Sapphic NeuroDistinct Black Lesbian Femmes and Sapphic NeuroDistinct Black Lesbian A-Art Collective so that we can be accountable for how we are in our illustration of our multidimensional facets. The media that depicts us is usually not created by those that exist in the sapphic spectrum. We have the ability to thrive in long-term relationships and connections and marriages. We have the ability to co-create and love. We are here being brave, living out loud. Our sexuality is our business, and at the same time, we share it publicly so that people can see that we do exist as Black, Indigenous, African, and Caribbean, lesbians and sapphics, and we have always been here. If those of you are more comfortable in sending me a private message at isetstyle@gmail.com to share your journey, or if you have any questions, you're welcome to do so. And likewise, you can always share your comments in the public platform if you're also comfortable. Being lesbian is a frequency that I'm thankful for because I am in my most authentic, most expansive space. And as a mental health and human rights advocate, it is essential because I have been misdiagnosed, misunderstood, and misrepresented. And that makes sense because when we are mischaracterized as who we are, we are seen as though there is something wrong with us, and some of us are told that we're going to go to hell, we're living in sin, and that it is against the laws of nature, when that's impossible because we come from nature and we were created in nature, and it is natural to be able to connect as same-sex loving people. I and those that are like me, we are here to share our stories, to live in our experiences, in the face of those that are attempting to usurp our rights, usurp our ability to be free. I always want everyone to know that without representation, without us coming forward, there are people that are still living in the shadows, in the dark, in the closet, and are being silenced out of fear, judgment, and shame. I am a person that will be here for you, and there's a community that exists for you in safety, in real life, and in virtual platforms. And so I intend that this was insightful and helpful for those of you that are late blooming lesbians and late blooming sapphics that really needed this message. I intend a luminous odyssey for you NeuroDistinct and sentient ones. And as always, embrace your nature. It has the roots to restore you. I am Iset, and I set the mic.